getting started. You can enjoy a little soft jazz under. We'll have it just for a little bit. My name is Josh Sello, and I'm the Executive Director of West Valley Community Services. And I'm so delighted to be joined tonight by our team and the folks at EMC Planning who helped us prepare tonight's event. It's going to work a little bit differently, I think, than some of the meetings you've been at in the past, in that you only will be able to chat with the hosts and co-hosts. And right now we don't have the ability for us folks to take themselves off mute in this room, but we will be spending a little bit of time in a breakout room shortly where you'll have an opportunity to meet other folks from the community and chat with them a little bit. With that, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and we're going to go ahead and get started with tonight's program. Again, thank you for being here this evening. My name is Josh Sello, and I am the Executive Director of West Valley Community Services. And we're very excited to have you at tonight's program presented by WVCS and our partners at EMC Planning. So why are we here tonight? Why do we come together? Well, our goals are threefold: to learn more about the housing element process. We want to engage in dialogue with our neighbors and folks who live in our communities. And we want to learn how we can get involved in the housing element process in Los Gatos. And that really is so important. This is a public process. This is an opportunity for us to raise our voices to say what kind of community we want to see. But it can feel hard. It can feel intimidating. We don't always know the way to connect, and there's a lot of language and policy and law around this. We want to help make that simpler so you can find out ways that you can get involved in the process in your community. Now, before we jump a little further, I want to do a little bit of Zoom housekeeping. For those of you here at the top, you already heard me say, right now, the chat is disabled. You can certainly send messages to the hosts and co-hosts, and you can use your chat button for that. All you do is click the chat button at the bottom of your screen. You also are not going to be able to take yourselves off mute in this main room, but we will be able to speak freely in our breakout rooms. The other thing is, if you want to change your name, the name that's showing up in your little square on the box, you can click the three dots in the upper right hand of your picture and you can rename yourself there. Now, before I go any further, I want to take a moment to just pause and say that one of the things I've been thinking a lot about this week are the people of Ukraine. And maybe we can take a minute to send our thoughts and our heart out to the folks in Ukraine right now. Okay. Thank you. So one of the ways that we want to get started is to learn a little bit more about the folks who are joining us tonight. And to do that, I have two poll questions for you. The first poll question is, I want to take the temperature. How much do we know about the housing element? Now, don't worry, you can be honest with your answer. We just want to know where our community is at the start of tonight's program. So go ahead. I just launched the poll. Take a minute to answer the question. Just the first question that comes to your mind. How much do you feel you know about the housing element process? Great, we have about almost everyone. Okay, I'm gonna give 5 more seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, and okay, I'm gonna end the poll. And I'm gonna share the results so you can see them. So it looks like a good portion of the folks here, nearly just over 75%, feel like they're just starting to learn about it or they have a basic understanding. Well, this is a good place to start. But don't worry, if you feel like you're really fairly good understanding or you're an expert in our midst, that's great. We can help each other learn. I have one more question before we move on. And what is the city you call home? So just take a moment to fill in, what is the city that you call home? Not a trick question. Okay, and I'm gonna end the poll in 3, 2, and And it is not surprising that Los Gatos is well represented tonight. Wonderful. For a program about the housing element process in Los Gatos, that is great representation. Wonderful. Okay, so what is our plan for this evening? So here's an overview of what we've got on target for tonight. We're in the midst of our welcome, but we're going to move away from that shortly. We have the folks at EMC Planning, along with Kylie Clark, our public policy coordinator, are going to do a presentation and overview on the housing element process. We'll do a short breakout so that we can get to know each other for a little bit. We have an incredible panel, which I won't introduce yet, but I'm very excited for you to get to chat with them. We'll give some time for you to submit questions to ask of our panel. We'll have a follow-up breakout room, and then we'll conclude for the evening. And just to give you a little idea of how we want to end, we are going to ask everyone to please commit to engage in some specific way with the housing element process. We want to make sure that we have a takeaway for everyone. Now, talking about housing gets to the heart of the things that we care most about. What our neighborhoods look like, what our communities look like. It's about safety. It's about security. It's about our future. In many cases, our homes are our largest investment. So it's about our future, our children's future. And we can see in a lot of the conversations around housing in our region, but certainly in our country, these can get very heated. But heated conversations are often not the most productive. And we want tonight to be a productive conversation where we feel all of us can engage and feel fully present and fully ourselves. And to do that, I'm asking all of us here to agree to a set of community agreements, which are on your screen right now. We want to use I statements. We want to step up to give our opinion, but we want to step back and give other people space to give their opinion. While we want to share what we learned, we don't want to attribute what people said who are not here to other people. So we don't want to gossip, but we want to take away what we learn and share it with others. Assume best intentions. We want to listen and not interrupt, which occasionally is difficult in the Zoom space, I will admit. It's okay to disagree. It can feel unsafe, but it's certainly okay to disagree. We want to be respectful. We want to engage in conflict resolution in a constructive manner, respect everyone's different experience with different subjects, and we want to uplift each other. And if there's something that's difficult, we want to check in on each other. Now, that was a pretty quick, but if I can see a show of thumbs, do people feel comfortable showing up with these community agreements in our conversation tonight? If I can see some virtual or some real thumbs, those are some nice thumbs. Awesome, y'all. This is the kind of community that I feel proud to serve in. Before we move on to our presentation about the housing element process, I want to welcome some elected officials who've come to join us tonight. I want to thank Brandon Weaver, who's here on behalf of Senator Cortese. I want to thank all of our town council members. I believe I saw Mariko Sayak, Councilmember Sayak is here, so thank you for joining us. We have town staff and town commissioners here as well. Thank you for prioritizing this. We know you all, everyone, has lots of other competing needs, and we're really grateful for you being here tonight to engage in this conversation. With that, I'm excited to turn over the conversation about what the housing element is to Andy Flower from EMC Planning and Kylie Clark, our public policy coordinator here at West Valley Community Services.
Thank you, Josh. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being here tonight. My name is Kylie Clark, and I'm the public policy coordinator at West Valley Community Services.
And I'm Andy Flower, principal planner at EMC Planning Group.
So tonight we're going to be giving just a basic presentation on the housing element to give everyone a fundamental understanding before we start our discussion. And Andy's going to be giving the bulk of this presentation, and I'll really be here to support with some more local information and what I know from West Valley Community Services. It's also important to note that we won't be able to cover everything super in depth. The goal is to give you a basic and wide understanding, and then we can go from there. And also hopefully the panel will answer a lot of your questions and go a little deeper. And also just, so you know, we'll be sending out the slides and also a recording of this meeting following the event.
Thank you, Kylie. As I mentioned, I'm Andy Flower. I'm from EMC Planning Group, and we're currently working on housing elements with 6 jurisdictions in Santa Clara and Marin counties, including Los Gatos.
And a little bit about West Valley Community Services. So we're a nonprofit and we provide food, housing, support services, and more to low-income and homeless individuals and families in the West Valley. And this includes Los Gatos as one of our service areas. And something else I wanted to mention is that I'm the public policy coordinator, and this is a new area that we're entering. And so something that we've been doing is mobilizing our clients and uplifting them to speak in front of city councils and to do advocacy based on their lived experience.
Thank you, Kylie. Oops. Sorry. So tonight we'll be talking a little bit about the housing crisis, and we know that's a large issue, and it's a large issue throughout the country. We'll just be providing a brief context and bringing it home. When you mention the housing crisis, it could mean something so different to folks throughout the country. People are having very different experiences within each state, each county, and even each city or town. Sorry, my mouse got ahead of me there. As we can see here in this graph that shows us the difference between home values in Los Gatos and how they've increased over the years in comparison with Santa Clara County and the Bay Area region. And rents have also increased even more in Los Gatos than within the county and the Bay Area region.
And at West Valley Community Services, we also get a very clear look into the need for housing. And this is demonstrated by some of these numbers up on this slide. So in 2020 through 2021, 23% of our new clients were from Los Gatos. We also gave financial assistance to 38 clients, and this was the second most of all 5 of those cities we serve, just behind San Jose, where we gave financial assistance to 78. West Valley Community Services distributed $1,265,686 in rental assistance in the past year. And if that doesn't demonstrate the need for housing, I do not know what does. And we also gave critical help to 3,168 people in the last year.
It sounds like West Valley Community Services has been responsive to the needs locally. And can you tell us also more about affordable housing generally?
Yes, absolutely. So in terms of now what do we do about this housing crisis? It's hard to talk about that without talking about affordable housing. And this is a term that's been thrown around a lot lately. And I think that there are a lot of different ideas of the definition of affordable housing. And of course, there are a lot of nuances to it. But really, what affordable housing is housing that a household is able to pay for, and housing that they'll be able to pay for while still meeting their other basic needs, such as food, transportation, and healthcare. Another term that you might hear is missing middle housing. And this is a form of housing that tends to be affordable because it is multifamily, but it can still fit in with single family neighborhoods. And so this is things like fourplexes. I'm very proud to live in a fourplex in Los Gatos, duplexes, and other types of housing like that. It's called missing middle because it's largely lacking in our area and in general. And in California, affordable housing is no more than 30% of gross household income. And it's also, as I said, a myth-ridden term. And so Lauren just dropped a link in the chat for a blog post about the myths behind affordable housing, because I do not have time to cover all of those tonight. One more thing I wanted to mention is just to give you an idea of the definitions of some acronyms. So you might be hearing the terms BMR, BMP, AMI a lot, and I want to make sure that you know what these mean. So BMR stands for below market rate, and BMP stands for below market price. And these are housing units or buildings that fall below the typical market price of a unit. And AMI is area median income, and that is the median income in a given area. And so for Santa Clara County, it's $151,300, and that is compared to $79,900 in the United States. So you can tell there's a big difference there.
An important term that gets talked about a lot around affordable housing and with this housing element is equity. And we want to recognize that this term can mean very different things to different people. If you're a property owner, then the term equity might relate to the investment in property that you have. It can also mean inclusion and access, particularly for equal access to opportunity. And what we know about this sixth cycle housing element update is that the state has included laws incorporated with this housing element. That means that our attempts for equity is not just checking the box. Instead, it needs to be a lens by which we carry out our actions and activities throughout this entire update process. And what that means specifically, this new legislation, AB 686, you may have heard it called, or Affirmatively Furthering Fair Housing. And this is straight out of the letter of the law. It is to take meaningful actions in addition to combating discrimination that overcome patterns of segregation and foster inclusive communities free from barriers that restrict access to opportunity based on protected characteristics.
And I want to talk a little bit about, oh, thank you. And I want to talk a little bit about housing locally. And so something that I think you really can't talk about can't not talk about when talking about housing is homelessness. So in Los Gatos in 2019, there were 16 unhoused individuals. But something to note is that we just conducted the point in time count, which is meant to gather these numbers. And so that's currently in the process of happening. And these numbers are certainly going to change. And I think it's safe to say that they might increase. There's a lack of affordable housing locally. Los Gatos got more than 80 applications for a single affordable housing unit that was selling for $260,000 recently. And so that's a lot of people who aren't going to get the affordable housing that they were in need of. There's also a ripple effect that accompanies housing. And so if there's a lack of housing, that leads to a lack of people in the jobs that we need them in. So teachers, customer service employees, bus drivers, and this affects the local economy and our quality of life. And really the bottom line that I want to emphasize is that this affects all of us, whether you're in need of affordable housing, whether you care about it, it will affect you. And I'm sure a lot of us have noticed this happening, especially in the service sector.
And this leads us to the housing element. So I'm going to take on the next few slides and talk a little more specifically about the process that we're engaging right now with these three communities within Santa Clara County. And tonight we're specifically going to focus on Los Gatos. So we'll start with what is the housing element. We don't want to assume that that anyone might be new to this walking in the door tonight. And if so, we welcome you with open arms. We're so glad, and you're right on time. We're trying to make sure there's on-roads for inclusion and for sharing your ideas throughout the entire process. So the housing element, it's a visionary policy document that is required by state law, and it's required to be updated every 8 years. It's not about building the housing, but it does set the stage to accommodate existing and projected future housing needs for people of all income groups. So with this, we'll be throughout the process, we'll be selecting sites where new housing should go and how many units could be built on potential sites. We'll also be outlining programs and policies to encourage development on those sites. So the key components of a housing element, we not only start with analysis of housing needs, we continually keep open to understanding the housing needs in the area and make sure that we incorporate that as we put together our sites and our policies and programs. We evaluate constraints, and some of those constraints can be through the permitting process. There can also be environmental constraints. We try to remove the barriers. So through this, we're identifying those sites that are most ripe for development of affordable housing and for housing of all income levels. So in the end, we'll end up with a housing plan with goals, policies, programs, and quantified objectives. And throughout, as I mentioned, the entire process, we need to make sure we have a special focus on affirmatively furthering fair housing and through public engagement. So when we're talking about units, often people want to know what are the numbers for each of the communities, and the number comes from this regional housing needs allocation, and often this acronym is pronounced RHNA. You may have heard that before. If not, then we'll remind you again of what this means. So this is the number of homes needed now and through the 8-year cycle of 2023 through 2031 at varying affordability levels. So this number was initially assigned to the entire Bay Area by the state, the California Department of Housing and Community Development, or HCD. And from there, from within the Bay Area, it then gets assigned specific to cities and towns, in this case, the town of Los Gatos, by the Association of Bay Area Governments. So this is the table of housing units anticipated to be needed within the next 8-year cycle. We have 537 very low, 310 low-income units, 320 moderate income units, and 826 above moderate income units for a total of 1,993. And as Kylie mentioned earlier, the AMI that all of these income groups are referencing is the AMI in Santa Clara County, which is 151,300. The total RHNA for all of Santa Clara County was is set at 129,579. We wanted to share with you the RHNA numbers from the last housing cycle, and first of all, let you know that this number 340 was assumed throughout the, it was considered, considered as ABAG calculated the RHNA. So this is not additive. We do not have 1,993 plus 340. And we also wanted to share with you the success that Los Gatos did have with producing housing in their town in this cycle up till now. It'll be this spring when there'll be an up-to-date APR or annual progress report for HCD that goes through to 2021. So who is involved with the process of building affordable housing? It really takes a large group of people, and we can think, we maybe start with the policymakers, and if we think of it in scale, we first start with the state, and then with this, which would be HCD, and then ABAG, and then decision makers, the town and city councils. So so what they do is they help provide the policy that then become the regulations that city staff work through with the developers and current neighbors and future neighbors as they come to the planning counter requesting permits to build the housing. So it's helpful for us to think about everybody working together, because we can problem solve and get beyond the barriers and the constraints so that we can pave the road to affordable housing and housing generally to be built in the future. So this is where our role comes in, EMC Planning Group. We were working closely together with town staff and to provide information and learn from the Housing Element Advisory Board. And through that process, we have a website that we encourage everybody to come to, and we'll also have community meetings and the like, so that we can engage with the public and learn as much as we can about the community vision, because this is a visionary document that we're working with. We'll then summarize the comments that we're hearing, and we'll also make those comments available verbatim as we move through the Planning Commission, Town Council, and finally to HCD as we request certification of the housing element, hopefully by 2023 January. So when we bring this to HCD, it's important to know too that this is one piece of the entire general plan. This is one chapter essentially. So we call it an element, but truly it's a chapter. And it's beneficial that in the moment, the town of Los Gatos has been working on updating the entire general plan. And as you can see by the titles of these other chapters, it's all interrelated with concept of housing. And it's important that as we write the housing element specific to Los Gatos, that we're doing this in a way that is consistent and aligned with all of these other chapters as they're being updated. And as far as timing, this is where we are now. We're incorporating what we know about the site's inventory, in part based on all of the hard work that has come before us with the land use element update for the general plan and the visioning that went along with that. But we're going to be including the public here soon with an interactive map that that can help everybody from the perspective of a planner to think about the trade-offs for choosing sites. So there will be ways to strategize to focus on the sites that you would want to see become housing, or those that you would maybe want to preserve as they are now. And in the end, we'll be working through Planning Commission and Council with recommendations, and we hope that that lots of you out there today will participate along the way. Never has your voice been more impactful for affecting policy, and that's true on many fronts. For one, the impact, of course, of AB 686 and the strengthening of the role of public engagement for this cycle. And the other is really just the general plan is the place to affect policy. While it's the most conceptual and visionary, it also is the time by which there is the most movability or consideration for new ideas. In other words, once it goes beyond the general plan, it then becomes regulations. And the hardest time to affect these kinds of rules is when there is a specific development requested and in consideration by review. So we hope that you'll consider getting involved, and we have lots of ways to get involved. You can go to our website, engagelosgatoshousing.com. You can sign up to stay connected, and we'll be sure to let you know about upcoming events as soon as possible, and as frequently as is necessary. We promise not to spam you. And we encourage you to attend the Housing Element Advisory Board, Planning Commission, and Town Council meetings. And any information related to those will be available through our website. We encourage you to talk to your friends and neighbors about the housing element. Please consider being an ambassador to discussing the importance of participating right now, especially. It's before we know it, we'll be handing off a draft to HCD, and we would love to be able to incorporate your voice early on in our process of forming recommendations through the Planning Commission and Council in the town of Los Gatos. You're also welcome to reach out to us. These are our email addresses, and we'll have more information soon about an upcoming community meeting. So thank you for attending and watching our presentation, and thank you, Kylie, for doing this presentation with me.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Andy and Kylie. So grateful for that thorough and detailed review of the housing element process. We'll share this full presentation with you at the end so that you can get all those emails and that contact information. Before I go further, I want to also recognize a few other elected officials that I realized were in the room as well, in addition to Councilmember Sayoc. We have Councilmember Matthew Hodes tonight with us, Vice Mayor Maria Risto, and Councilmember Mary Badame. Thank you so much. I think it means a lot that the leaders of our community are engaging with all of us. This is exactly what you want, and really thank you. In addition, from outside of the town of Los Gatos, we have Councilmember Kitty Moore from the city of Cupertino. So thank you all for being here, for engaging. It is not easy to be an elected official. People need to do it, and we're grateful for our elected officials for all the work that you do to represent and lead our communities. In a moment, we're gonna head into breakout rooms, and we'd like you to take an opportunity to meet the folks in your room. So we have 3 questions we'd like you to consider. The first is your name and why you're here tonight. What are your hopes and concerns around housing in Los Gatos? And then this is a great opportunity to brainstorm analysts. We're going to be recording those questions. So your moderators might be taking some notes. So don't be surprised if they're taking notes. They're not attributing them to any person in the group. They're just writing down the questions so that we know what to ask the panelists during the next section. With that, we will see you back here in 10 minutes. That was a very short 10 minutes. That's what often happens. And I'm sure you didn't get all the time you needed. There's still opportunity to add questions that you have for our panel. If you'd like to send in a question, you can open the chat box, which is at the bottom of your screen, and just chat your questions to the moderators. We'll be putting those all together in a document. And use those as the basis when we move to the questions for our from our audience. You can also use that to respond to questions that I'm going to start posing to our panelists as we get started. So let's move into our panel. If we can spotlight all of our panelists. I'm very excited to welcome some great folks, one of whom you've already seen speak tonight, and that is Andy Flower, Principal Planner for EMC Planning Group. Welcome back, Andy. We also have Allison Singalani, who is the Policy and Research Associate with SV at Home, which is doing great work on advocacy and certainly is a partner of West Valley Community Services. We have Carla McLaren, who is a BMR resident and a West Valley Community Services client. Thank you, Carla, for making the time to be here with us tonight. And we have Victor Sakalar, who is also a BMR resident and has lived experience. Oh, that's his Victor Agasteo. So Victor, I apologize for giving you the wrong last name. And the final person on our panel this evening is Bianca Newman. And Bianca is the Director of Business Development for EH Housing. And I just want to say Allison and Bianca joined us at the similar program on the city of Cupertino at the end of last year. And we're very pleased to have them both again. So we're going to go ahead and get started. I have some questions for this group to start with. Feel free to jump in, although I will have some questions targeted to specific folks on this panel. And again, to everyone in the audience, if you hear things you want to comment on and you want it included in the question and answer section, when we get to audience questions, please go ahead and chat those to our moderators, and they'll include that in that document. And just to make sure we're all on the same page, it is Victor Sakalar, right, Victor? Yes, I think that's correct. Okay, John is helping Victor.
Yeah, go ahead. Hello, yes, that's correct. Victor Sakalar.
Sakalar. Thank you, Victor.
I had a question.
Yes, sir.
I never got the reply. We have a lot of homeless who need to go to Veterans Hospital and to the hospitals. One woman has a broken arm, living in the woods, and they're over almost 60 years old. One man is 67 and he has a hip, he can't walk, and he has a tumor in his lungs and he needs rides to the hospital. And there used to be a van would stop in Los Gatos back in the 80s on the way from Santa Cruz and pick up veterans from Los Gatos and take them to Palo Alto, and they cut that out. Also, Los Gatos cut out the Greyhound that used to go to San Francisco. A lot of services were cut out, to the middle class. And I'll leave it at that.
No, actually, Victor, I want to start there, and maybe you can start us, but I want to open it up to the panel. Can you tell us more about the realities of homelessness, experiencing homelessness in Los Gatos, and what are the things you'd like folks to know about that?
Yes, I'd like to know it's hard on the veterans and the ones getting older. A lot of them are geriatric. They're 65 and older, and it's very rough on them. Half the time we wonder if they're going to stay alive another year when it gets very, very cold, when they're sleeping out in the cold. And we lost 5 veterans. They died. This was like 20 years ago, before Joe Griner was working at St. Luke's. They died of hypothermia, and a lot of veterans died of alcoholism, also, who were Vietnam vets. And that's the way it went. They were really neglected in Los Gatos for a long, long time. And then they put up a memorial for veterans, but they don't mention this thing here, okay? And I'll leave it at that. on veterans. But also we have a lot of homeless need a lot of help with housing, and they're not getting any younger. You know, most of them are going to hit 70 years old pretty soon. And a lot are going to be 65. I'd say maybe 70% of our homeless are old. And I'll leave it at that. If you have any more questions, you can ask me.
Thank you, Victor. It's heartbreaking, but thank you for
But-
sharing that
But
with
you
us.
know, there were more services in the 80s as far as transportation to the hospitals than there are now in Los Gatos.
Yeah.
Somehow they blocked that veterans van coming from Santa Cruz,
Mhm.
and they blocked the Greyhound that used to stop in Los Gatos every day from Santa Cruz, go from Monterey going to San Francisco. And there was also Peerless going from from San Francisco to Oakland to Eugene, Oregon.
Thank you,
I'll-
Victor. Thank you for that. I want to move a little more to talk about some preconceived notions about affordable housing. So I'm going to put a pin in that for this moment. But if we can talk a little bit, and I want to open this up certainly to Carla and Bianca and Allison as well. Can you talk to us a little about what some of the misconceptions there are about affordable housing, what it looks like, how it operates? Allison, do you want to get us started?
Sure. So I think there's a lot of misconceptions that affordable housing is not attractive, that it's cheaply made, and that's really not the case. So the state has so many requirements for affordable housing that really go above and beyond market rate housing in terms of the quality of the construction, in terms of the kinds of services that are provided. It can often look very artistic. I recently, one of my colleagues does a fantastic driving tour of affordable housing in Santa Clara County. And I got to ride with him recently and see some of these developments, and they're beautiful. In many cases, you would never know they were affordable housing. They blend right in with the community, and in some cases, they are more attractive than the housing that's around them. So definitely, that's one piece.
Other folks, Carla, do you want to weigh in on this also?
Yes, please. I was just going to say that another misconception may be that they're not safe enough, and especially for the elderly. But I live in such a very safe community, and everyone seems to look out for each other, and it's a beautiful thing. And friendships that develop, no one's a stranger there. We're all friends, and I have made so many friends. I've just barely been there a year, and the landscape is beautiful, like you were saying, Allison. I just want to add that our community is affordable and great neighbors. That we seem to care about each other. They're built well, and maintenance is always on everything immediately. It's just very professionally done, but on a very personal level as well. Just want to add that it's been great.
Thanks, Carla. Any other misconceptions folks want to lift up?
Not on. I would say all the good stuff, but are we still on the bad? The misconceptions? Because the list of good is so much more.
Well, I appreciate your enthusiasm, Carla. Thank you. That's wonderful. Bianca wants to add something also, but needs to unmute.
Okay.
So
Okay.
Bianca might need to come. Let's see, actually, I know what we need to do. Okay, Bianca, how about you?
I was just going to say that somehow it's a detriment to communities, but really, I mean, I think it strengthens communities. It creates opportunities for a more diverse population to get to live in a place, especially higher resourced neighborhoods that would be difficult for working families to otherwise live in, or seniors to otherwise afford to live in. It really does, create more inclusive communities.
I'm glad you actually used the word inclusive, Bianca. So I want to sort of bring it to that. We framed this event around affordability and inclusivity. And can any of our panelists talk about how do those two goals work together? And what does that look like in a community, affordability and inclusivity? Who would like to get us started?
I'm happy to get us started since I since I threw it out there. I would say that you can't really have one without the other, right? If we're in communities that are high income communities, then and where housing is very expensive, people can't afford to live there without the creation of affordable housing as an option. And that's really what, is going to make it so that the people working in that community, providing, your childcare providers, the grocery store clerk, all of those individuals are then able to live in that community. And, study after study has shown that everyone benefits when we live in more inclusive communities.
Wonderful. Thank you, Bianca.
So I'll go. I looked up the median home price in Los Gatos this morning because it seems like every time I look at it in any of our communities, it's going up. It's up to almost $2.7 million. Average rent is almost $3,000 a month. If you're a Los Gatos homeowner, if you had to buy your home again today at its current value, could you afford to live here? Can your children afford to live here? When we're talking about inclusion, we're really talking about a really broad, full range of people that are living not in isolation by income level, but if fully in community with one another. If we want to live in a beautiful, diverse, and inclusive place, we have to ensure that we're planning for housing that's affordable to people of all income levels, of lower incomes, accessible to people with disabilities, provides entry-level options for young adults, lets young families live close to the great schools that they need, allows older adults to live independently, and provides homes and services for people who are experiencing homelessness. All that is a part of the housing.
One of the things that we often hear about processes like the housing element is that it's bureaucratic, it's hard to get involved, and it's demotivating. My voice can't be heard. It doesn't matter what I think. And no matter what you think, it doesn't matter. So how do we counter those arguments? How do we encourage community members to raise their voice so that they don't feel like there's not an opportunity for them to engage? Maybe Andy, you can start us off here, because this is a lot of the work I think that EMC planning is doing.
What we're trying to do is to make sure that we address and inform respective of all learning styles. So we're wanting to make sure that that what we share is not overwhelming. There's a fire hose of information that we could make available to people and turn them away pretty quickly. And we want to make sure to not do that. So we try to stair step it and to bring in things like mapping for those who think more spatially. And we bring in surveys and we try to encourage people with tools that they can master, so that way the tools fall away and it really ends up being the dialogue, because that's where our learning can begin. Is the deeper the dialogue, the better our policies can coincide with the need, particularly for the larger region, because all of these communities that we're working with in Santa Clara County are the highest resource communities. So we have to look to regional needs. And I also want to say, we're learning how to communicate with a wider, diverse audience. This isn't something that has been done for decades and decades. We're learning right along with you. So we appreciate any feedback that folks can share with us along the way. Maybe you experience something new that somebody else is trying. Let us know if it's working for you and you think it might work for others. If we attempt something and you don't feel like it's working, let us know how we might be able to do it better. Our focus is really for it to be iterative and responsive and reflective to what is helpful to the community.
Thank you, Andy. Go ahead, Bianca.
This is kind of like a more global thing to think about, but getting involved in the housing element process really helps you set the framework for what housing looks like in your community. And in some ways, that's a much easier thing to do than getting involved in every single housing project that gets developed in a place, right? So if you think about it that way,
I think sometimes that can really be helpful. At least for me, I certainly find that helpful to think about it in that way, that like, oh, well, this is an opportunity to really big picture what, like, big swath, what the rules are, where are the places we want to build housing, what are those things that are most important for housing in our community. And by setting that framework, I think then you don't have to be as involved on that granular level, which can be very time consuming.
Yeah, thank you. You know, I find that when we talk about issues like affordable housing, we start to forget that there's actually people. This is not just a thing. There are people that have stories that are part of this. And I'm really grateful, Victor and Carla, for you both being here tonight, taking the opportunity to share. Can you both, maybe Carla, you can go first. Can you talk to us a little bit about what does it mean to be able to live in Los Gatos, to be able to have a place that you can afford in the community, and how has that impacted your life?
Oh, when I had my own apartments when I was younger, I'm now 65. So, you know, I had family come to live with me, and then I've lived with them at different times all through the years. We've kind of just helped each other out because it's so expensive. And no matter how many hours you're working overtime, and I had 2 young girls to raise on my own, and I had family come and live with me different times, and then I would live with them. And when I finally I was able to come to Los Gatos in low income housing, I have my darling little studio. I'm so grateful to be living alone again and just to have my own place. I can't imagine being out there homeless and or in a shelter or anything like that. And I have made so many, all of my neighbors, and I have become friends. Everyone there together. They're so sweet to each other. Everybody seems to look out for one another. There's groups of people always, especially in the summer, gathering around and having, talking to each other. And at the very least, we all say hi. We're very friendly. We usually get into longer conversations because everyone loves everyone. And there's all kinds of nationalities that I am a part of. And somehow we manage, with very little English for many people, to communicate with each other, which has been an absolute wonderful experience for me. I mean, it's just been new and exciting to make so many friends, and just to be so supportive of each other. There's been Polish and Russian and all kinds of Asian, Korean, and so forth. And it's just, I have numerous names of new people, friends, instead of them just being neighbors. But then if you want to be on your own, you can be, a homebody if you want. But anytime you go out, it's beautiful surroundings. And I am just so thankful for everyone I've met, and that I have the opportunity to be part of such a sweet, loving community and friendly. And it's just great.
Thank you so much, Carla. I
Yes.
also value the diversity in our region. For me, it makes this one of, if not one of the best places to live in the world.
Absolutely.
Victor, how about you? What has been your personal experience being able to have a place that you can afford to live, to call home?
Well, I feel very grateful that I got that opportunity. Working with St. Luke's Church and helping the homeless has been very rewarding. Just helping them when they need food, clothing, warm food during the pandemic. And it's been very rewarding helping others.
Awesome.
I could tell you about my beginning. I came into the United States. I was working overseas, and I flew in to San Francisco with a 3-piece suit and a good government job. And I ended up losing my job and going to the hospital, and I walked into San Francisco with a 3-piece suit. I walked out pushing a shopping cart with all my belongings and a dog in it. And I finally got to Los Gatos. I'd been here back in the 60s. I'd ran track here at Vasona Park. So I was familiar with the area and I just stayed here, but it was very rough. I wasn't used to this, you know, kind of living.
Yeah.
Because I've been in the city and I stayed there at the Buddhist temple in Chinatown. And they were pretty nice to me there. I used to sleep also by a, where they make the fortune cookie factories in San Francisco. And I remember how kind the Asian women were. They'd come and hand me bags of lunch, you know, every morning. They're very nice people there. But it's been very rewarding helping the homeless and working with St. Luke's to help them. And I would like to really thank Joe Greiner because she's done so much to help the homeless since she's been here. Before that, it was very hard on the homeless. They had no meals, nothing.
She has, and she's here tonight. So thank you, Joe, for all your
Yes.
work and for joining us here this
You're
evening.
welcome.
Thank you.
Hi,
Thank you,
Joe.
Victor.
Thank you, Joe. Yes.
So I have some questions from the audience that have come to the panel that I
Yeah.
want to share. So let's go ahead to some of these questions. One of the first questions I got, and Andy, maybe you can start us off with this one, is how is the state going to enforce the RHNA allocations?
Okay, enforce. That's sort of a loaded question. There's a couple of different ways to interpret it, so I'm going to choose one.
Please.
Okay. So the way that it's enforced when it comes to certifying this housing element, housing plan, I'm trying to think of a way to describe the complex process in a simple way. They will review our draft document, and they'll be reviewing it with what we've seen through their revision request letters for the cities that have come before us down in Southern California. They have a keen eye on recognizing whether or not equity has been an involved part of the process from the beginning, from a lens through which to choose sites, and particularly for programs and policies. And so if there's not a clear understanding of what the housing needs are, then the policies that get included with the document that are supposed to encourage that housing at different affordability levels, if it's not related directly with an understood and described housing need, and of course that's going to be a plethora of needs. It's not one single. It's going to take a little bit to describe that, and we're counting on folks who are on the panel here today to help us understand that better, and folks who want to share with us along the way. That's the biggest key to success. So that's the way that HCD is comprehending and analyzing and reviewing the housing element. So the question was about RHNA numbers. So the numbers are only a piece of the housing element, and that just guides us to recognize capacity. So as I mentioned earlier in my presentation, the result of this housing element will not immediately be that, unfortunately, for the need that we know is here, but it won't mean that immediately housing units will be being built, but it does enable the capacity. It opens the door for the possibility for housing to be developed in the near future.
Okay. Bianca?
I'll give a shorter answer to how it will be enforced. No, I mean, all of that was great, but essentially there's been 2 laws that have been passed, AB 72, I think, and AB 215, that really give teeth to the RHNA numbers. And with that, HCD has been able to establish an enforcement agency. And so, or an enforcement arm. And so basically HCD will be ensuring that cities are meeting their RHNA goals. So, and adhering to their housing element plans. So there'll really be a push there. And then the other piece of that is there are now groups like Carla that are going out and actually forcing cities to comply with laws that have been in place in the past that cities have ignored or chosen not to work with. And so, I mean, really, I think there's going to be much more enforcement of housing element and RHNA numbers than there has been in the past.
Allison, did you want to add something?
I just really, just to clarify that what the state is enforcing is that cities are planning adequately for their RHNA numbers, that the cities are being good partners, that they're creating the processes and the opportunities for this housing to move forward. Now, cities are not the ones that are building it, but what they can do is make sure that the opportunities are there, that the process is streamlined, that the way is paved smoothly, that barriers are removed from the process, so that the developers can come in and build what needs to be built, and for that to move forward. So the state's role in enforcement is making sure that cities and towns are participating as good actors in the process.
Great, thank you. You know, one of the things I think that I've seen over the last few years is sort of an erosion of public discourse and an inability for us to talk about these very these very meaningful topics like housing that are sort of cut to the things we care about most. One of the questions we got was, I think, from someone who wants to talk to people about housing element, about housing, but especially over social media, feels like they need some more direction on how to engage with these conversations. So does anyone on the panel have any recommendations of ways folks can engage in conversation, either in person or over social media, in a way that, that doesn't invite, intolerance, ignorance, or serve as a hate amplifier? That is not a good sign.
Don't pretend to have all the answers to this. I think it helps to share personal stories. I think it helps to personalize that and help people understand this is not a story about buildings. This is a story about people. And these are people that are, are us. The people that need housing, they're us. They're those of us here on this panel. They're those of us here in this shared virtual space tonight. We are the people that this housing is for, all of us together.
I agree with her. This is about human beings. And there's to be that human-to-human contact and let them know these are human beings that are suffering out there, not some mannequins at Macy's department store. Thank you.
Thank you, Victor. That was beautiful.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Carla.
Oh, I was thinking that I went to the library. I go on my bike and so I saw two homeless people sitting on a bench, and I didn't know they were homeless at first, so I was just saying hi. And it turned out they said, "Do you know where we could get a hot meal tonight? We're in a bad way. We don't have anywhere to go." And I thought, oh my goodness, that is so sad. So I took their names and numbers, and I do have a paper now that of some places that I can call them tonight even and let them know and see how they're doing. And because I was very concerned and it was so sad. And I thought, okay, when I got home that night and just my windows open and I felt how cold it was. And I thought, here I am, roof over my head. I've got my own little home and I can be warm and toasty. I just shut my door. How are they doing tonight? In the cold wind. And I just wanted the best for them. So I prayed for them. I always pray for all of my community as well. But just very thankful and grateful for, what I have. And I like to share through the mail for people that need food and all kinds of needs. There are so many needs out there. It's incredible. It's overwhelming. So I just wanted to add that I'm very grateful to have a roof over my head. And I want homeless people to have a place to go. I'm sorry,
Yeah.
Bianca, wait, were you going to say something?
Well, I just want to add
Oh,
something, Carly, because I think it's a perfect reminder of why the personal story is sort of like what Victor and Allison were saying.
yes.
This is what makes this big amorphous thing that has a lot of
Mhm.
legislation.
Yes.
It's down to like two people that you met and that
Yes.
experience. And so, Carla, thank you for sharing that story.
You're
I really
welcome.
appreciate
And
it.
I do see them all over, you know, I mean, they can be in front of the stores. Yes,
Yeah.
but you're welcome. I'm
Thank you.
glad I shared that because I was very concerned, and I always am, you know, about them. Yeah.
Bianca, I think you had something also that you wanted to share. You're good? Okay, I think we have time for probably one more question for the panel, and this is another general for everyone. So we saw the timeline that Andy and Kylie shared at the top, and we see what we're driving towards. And then Allison talked about how it's not about building. We're not building by 2023. It's sort of we're making a vision of what we want the future to look like. What is success? If we were to say, like, what does success look like as part of this process? And maybe each of you can give in 1 or 2 sentences. How would you define success for this process? And Bianca, why don't we start with you? How would you define success?
Well, I'm gonna come at it from the affordable housing development point of view. And I'm gonna say that there is a clear understanding of the process to develop housing in this community.
Awesome, thank you. Andy, how about you? How would you define success?
Well, as the consultant writing the plan, I want to say certification with HCD in a way that is reflective of the community vision. That's our goal.
Great. Victor, how would you define success?
Success, I would say, is the first step of this forward that you're doing, because there's an old saying, a journey of 1,000 miles starts with one baby step.
Yeah, that's important. Thank you for the reminder. Carla, how would you define success?
Well, I just think people coming together, being able to have, you know, support for each other and caring and doing what we can. We always have anything we can give of ourselves to other people. And I just want the mayors or any authority that can cause this to happen and have more places for people to go with low income housing. I'm praying for that their hearts and mind will be moved and, you know, want to have this as a whole, all of us together, supporting each other. It gives me chills thinking about that. I want, you know, that would be successful. And I want to see that happen. I really do.
Awesome. Thank you. And Allison, how would you define success?
I think that all members of the community feel empowered to participate in the process that results in a housing element that's responsive to the needs of the community and removes the barriers, for as many barriers as possible, to the housing that we need at all income levels, from extremely low income to market rate.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Allison and Andy and Bianca and Victor and Carla. I could listen to you all for quite a bit longer, but we have to conclude this portion of our program. I want to say that we got a lot of additional questions we did not have time to answer tonight. We will include some of those questions and references in a follow-up email we'll be sending all of you. We'll also be sending you a survey to fill out after tonight's program. We're not quite done yet, so please don't leave. We're actually going to be moving back into our breakout rooms for just a little bit of time, and we're going to ask you to consider a few questions, which we will also drop in the chat. And the questions are, how did hearing from folks with lived experience in affordable housing and homelessness impact your perspective about the housing element? What are you going to do with what you learned and discussed tonight? And there's going to be a follow-up question on that when we come back together. And sort of part of that is, how do you see yourself getting involved in the housing element process? And with that, we will see you back here in about 11 minutes. We'll wait till everyone gets back in the room. Okay. So we're just about done for this evening. We're going to conclude in about 3 minutes, but we have a few final things. The first is, I want to end us taking us back to where we started with a couple of poll questions. So the first question is, after this program tonight, How much do you feel like you know about the housing element? So go ahead. Again, it's anonymous, so feel free to be honest. Let us know how you feel, if we've moved the needle forward on improving the general knowledge about the housing element. Okay, we'll give it 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Okay, and here are the results. So you can see. Now I just noticed I didn't give you an option to say, I'm about the same as I was before. Always thinking, always thinking. Okay, and I have one more question to ask you all, and that is, I asked you to make a commitment to how you're going to get involved in the housing element process. So here's your time. Studies say that if you actually commit to something, if you write it down, if you click a box, actually, if you click a box and you tell someone, so this is the first thing, but I want to know, how are you going to engage yourself in the housing element process in the town of Los Gatos? So please check one of these options, and then the homework will be then tell someone what you chose as your option, because that's the way you really commit, is if you tell someone what the goal is that you've committed to doing. Okay, I'm going to give you 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Okay, and this is what folks committed to doing to get involved, which is great. I like the overachievers and the all of the above. Y'all are awesome. This is a great group. Okay, so we are nearly at our time here. So I just have a few final bits of housekeeping. I want to thank you all so much for being here tonight. I want to thank our elected officials, our commissioners, our town council members, and our town staff for being here with us. I want to thank our panel and presenters, Andy Flower, Kylie Clark, Allison Singalani, Bianca Newman, Victor Sakalar, and Carla McLaren. And then we have a whole bunch of links for you to take with you tonight. We'll also be emailing these out. You have the link to the Los Gatos housing element, the town housing element, our housing element page. There's some blog posts about the myths and realities of homelessness and affordable housing. SV at Home has a housing element toolkit. And we would love you to take a survey. Who doesn't want a survey? We love surveys. This is how we learn and get better for the future. So if you have a few minutes and can share your feedback on our survey, it will be there in the forms. Please fill that out. That would be great. Joe Greiner, you're getting a lot of love in the private chat to me. So know that you are deeply, deeply loved by this community. Thank you for your leadership. And thank you all for showing up tonight. This is how work happens in our communities. It's messy, it's difficult, it's hard, it's painful. Sometimes it doesn't get us where we want to go when we want to get there. But you all are active, you're engaged, you care. That's the kind of community we want to see here in the town of Los Gatos and in the West Valley. Thank you all for being here. Thank you all for showing up. Be safe, have a good night. And thank you again also to our moderators who I didn't get to thank. Be well, everyone, and see you soon.